gather here to embrace a universe, the realities we live and the visions we dream, the good we've seen and the justice we yearn for, the love we've felt and the love we're still waiting for, the people we are and the people we might yet become. We come with the faith that revelation is never sealed, ready to celebrate that we are always becoming and to acknowledge a world ever changing. We gather because we know it is sacred both to cherish and to yearn. So let us tell our stories and honor our stories, listen, encounter, grow, discover, and revel in the truth of becoming. Come, let us worship together. And now, as many of our children as are not off on school vacation somewhere this week are going to lead our opening song, Every Little Thing.
One of my favorite books for kids is Bob Marley's daughter, Sedella's book, Every Little Thing. So I thought that would be a great way to start today. We'll just do the chorus, and I hope you'll sing along with us.
Good morning. Hi, I'm Jim Hamilton, and I'm your worship associate today. It is my pleasure to be here. I would like to invite Karen Sankey and Liz Connors forward to light our chalice. Please rise and remain standing through the doxology.
Let this flame be a symbol to us of the wholeness we seek.
Its brightness dispelling gloom, lighting a path to faith and hope.
Its glow reminding us of the sacred bonds that link us to all living things.
Its radiance calling us to cast the light of freedom, justice, and peace upon all the world.
Please be seated. Good morning and welcome. I'm the Reverend Susan Milner, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. It's my honor and my pleasure to serve as interim minister to this historic and vital congregation. We gratefully acknowledge the Patuxet Wampanoag people on whose ancestral lands we gather today, and we commit to support and honor their history and culture. We really want to warmly welcome all of you here today, members, friends, newcomers, visitors, whoever you are, wherever you are on your spiritual journey. We want, for this 1 hour, we hope, we seek for you to feel at home and safe and at ease in this space. And so please know that you are welcome. Every one of you is invited to coffee hour following the service in the assembly hall, which you can reach through that door, through the parlor, and all the way down at the end of that building. If you are a visitor and you feel comfortable doing it, please take a red mug in coffee hour so that we can know that you're new to us and make a point of speaking with you. As for today, the only thing I want to remind you of, if you haven't yet, is to get in your transition forms. But I also want, you're going to be doing something in the service. I'm going to tell you now what that is. When you came in, you should have been given a pink index card and a green index card and a pencil. Did everyone get one? Anybody not get them? Raise your hand if you didn't. All right, here's what I want you to do. Our service today is a celebration of books and stories. And on the green card, if you feel inclined to participate, I would like for you to write the title of a book that in some way changed your life or changed you in a way small or great, in just a very, very few words about how it changed you. Maybe it was, maybe it was a cookbook that someone gave you and it made a lifelong gourmet cook out of you. Maybe it was a graphic novel that made you think about what your own personal superpowers are. Or maybe it was a wonderful novel, but a title of a book that changed you. And on the pink card, a book that you love. A book you love so much you would be willing, or maybe you have read it multiple times. So a book that changed you, green, and a book that you love, pink. Any questions? I slipped into my teacher mode there. All right, well, I am going to be come down to do a time for all ages, and I think we'll just let the kids stay where they are because this really is for everybody. There are books that we read so many times that they become part of us, and there are books that so many people read and so many people love that they become part of the culture, almost part of our ritual life. And one of those, I believe, does this look familiar to anybody? Goodnight Moon. By Margaret Wise Brown. And it's a book that we read to children small and larger, adults, that's part of shutting down for the day, going quiet. Now, I know that many of you know this book, so what I'm going to do is read the text of this book, but stop every once in a while to let you fill in a word if you can. Just shout it out. In the great green room, there was a telephone and a red balloon and a picture of the cow jumping over the moon. And there were 3 little bears sitting in chairs and 3 little kittens and a pair of mittens, good night socks, and a little toy house and a young mouse, and a comb and a brush and a bowl full of mush. and a quiet old lady who was whispering, "Hush. Good night, moon." Say it. Good night, moon. Good night, moon. Good night, cow jumping over the moon. Good night, light in the red. Good night, bears. Good night. Good night, kittens, and good night. Good night, clocks, and good night. Good night, little house. Good night, mouse. Good night, comb, and good night. Goodbye, nobody. Goodbye, mush. And good night to the old lady whispering, "Hush." Good night, stars. Good night, air. Good night, noises. Everywhere. It almost puts me to sleep doing it, but I'll try to stay awake. Thank you for helping us all remember a book that we have loved and we've read, either read as kids or read to kids. And we hope that all of you young people here continue and get to continue knowing books so well that you can say the words in them. But now we'll let you go downstairs as we sing you out to Go Now in Peace. Yesterday, there were a great many people in this room honoring the passing and noting and celebrating the life of a long time beloved member Steve Donovan. And it was a wonderful celebration. And I was struck, again, as I have been so many times, that this is one of the reasons that communities exist and that we're passionate enough to keep our religious communities existing. It's very hard to celebrate a life without a community. And so with great appreciation for all that you do for those people who participated yesterday, and for all of you who make it possible to keep this community that has existed for 400 years and been there in people's important moments of life, and we hope we'll be here for 400 more. Thank you for entering in the story in your time. And thank you for supporting, something in my throat, for supporting congregation. Morning offering will now be received. Gratefully.
So before the reading, let me give folks a little bit of extra time. I know many of you are still thinking about the books and the cards. We were going to collect them at the offertory, but that really didn't give you too much time for that. So if you'll think about that during the readings and hymn, I think it is 158, the ushers and I will collect them after the meditation. So just so you remember, pink is a book that you love, and green is the title of a book that changed you and how. Everybody got that? All right. We'll move forward then. So there are two readings today. The first is Great Stories from the God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy. The secret of great stories is that they have no secrets. The great stories are the ones you have heard and want to hear again. The ones you can enter anywhere and inhabit comfortably. They don't deceive you with thrills and trick endings. They don't surprise you with the unforeseen. They are as familiar as the house you live in or the smell of your lover's skin. You know how they end, yet you listen as though you don't. In the way that, although you know that one day you will die, you live as though you won't. In the great stories, you know who lives, who dies, who finds love, who doesn't, and yet you want to know again. That is their mystery and their magic. So the second reading is Salvation by Roxane Gay. Salvation is certainly among the reasons I read. Reading and writing have always pulled me out of the darkest experiences in my life. Stories have given me a place in which to lose myself. They have allowed me to remember. They have allowed me to forget. They have allowed me to imagine different endings and better possible worlds. So, that brings us to hymn 158. Praise the source of faith and learning. So please rise and we will sing hymn number 158.
Jim's going to collect the cards now if you still, Jim's going to collect the cards now if you still have them, or the ushers, yeah. So please. Thank you. Let me invite you to join into a spirit of meditation. We, you and I, are in between right now. In between what was and what will be. In between who we were and who we will become. In between letting go and embracing. In between saying hello and saying goodbye. In betweenness, it's a thing. In betweenness is a time of fullness, a time of anticipation, a time of hope, a time of worry, a time of sadness. In betweenness is a time of waiting, waiting for news, waiting for departure, waiting for arrival, waiting for death, waiting for life. In betweenness is a time of transformation, a time of reflection, a time of action, a time of growing, a time of becoming. During this time of in-betweenness, of knowing and not knowing, let us enter with open hearts and open spirits into the silence together. May our hopes and dreams take flight on the wings of love. And the words of today's meditation were written by Michelle LeGrave. of you know the Princess Bride from the movie or from stage, which is where I first encountered it. But it really comes from a 1973 novel by William Goldman in which he frames a fictional fairy tale of a princess within a story written by a fictional author named Morgenstern, and he introduces that fictional account with a fictional account of the first time that the narrator heard the tale as a child. And so this is the narrator. He's home from the hospital. He's lying in bed trying to recover, and his immigrant father comes into the room and says that he's going to read the boy a great story of adventure so that the boy can relax. And the boy says that he would like to stay awake, and he hopes to stay awake, but that he's really tired. Now keep in mind that everything in this scene comes from Goldman's imagination. It's all fictional. But what is real is the power of books and stories to transform people's lives, which Goldman captures so well. And I read from Goldman. Who can know when his world is going to change, the narrator says. Picture this now. An all but illiterate old man struggling with an enemy tongue, an all but exhausted young boy fighting against sleep, and nothing native sounds too foreign. Who could suspect that in the morning a different child would awake? Even a week later, I was not aware of what had begun that night. The doors that were closing while others slid into the clear. Who can sense revelation in the wind? What happened was just this. I got hooked on the story. For the first time in my life, I became actively interested in a book. In a time when books are being banned in libraries and schools because they tell uncomfortable truths or open too many possibilities or call readers to question what they've been told, it's important to remember how life-changing books can be. And don't doubt that they are being banned. In 2022 to 2023, over 3,300 books were banned in school, including novels by Toni Morrison and a novel by a children's book by Margaret Weiss Brown, who wrote Goodnight Moon, a one she wrote called Christmas in the Barn. And you see, access to stories and books and to history, real history, isn't simply a battle in a culture war. It's a matter of whether we live in a world that grows smaller or larger, a world where we have the freedom to learn and understand ourselves and others, or simply shrink into the perceptions and expectations that people hand on to us, like the antiquated doctrines and creeds that hymn referenced. Think about it. How many stories are there in this room of self-discovery from reading, from finding out you're not alone or that your difference from some norm is shared? How many of you found the courage to be who you are, to come out or follow your bliss, or simply accept your human condition because of reading a book or hearing or seeing a story? Find a book that lets you understand yourself or others better. People who make you, in those books, feel better about yourself or see how others share your struggle, and you may well find your life changed. There's one writer who identifies as autistic, and he says that of all the books he's read, The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro changed his feelings about himself. I work, he writes, in the hospitality where there's a weird mix of spoken and unspoken rules. For example, how to serve in the proper sequence and how to read the customer. And this has been always very hard for me to adjust to understand. But the remains of the day allowed me to understand myself and how I come across, and that has made me like myself more. What a wonderful thing that someone deluged by negative cultural messages can find a character who experiences the world the way that he does. How wonderful that he can then realize on some deep level that he's okay. The book, in that case, became a spiritual tool to self-acceptance. And finding out you're not alone, letting stories connect you to generations who share your struggle, can help you find the power to go on. Illustrated so beautifully, we notice in this Black History Month, in the writing of James Baldwin. As a boy, Baldwin was sent to live with slave owners in Baltimore. And there the woman of the family set out to teach him to read, because he could not. But her husband jumped in and forbade it, saying that if enslaved persons learned to read, they would leave. That was enough to make Baldwin determine that no matter what it took, he would learn to read. And of course, he not only learned to read, but to write eloquently. Years later, he wrote about his own transformation. You think your pain and your heartbreak are unprecedented in the world, but then you read. It was books that taught me that the things that tormented me were the very things that connected me with all the people who were alive, who had ever been alive. Books gave him the story of his people and humanity, and the strength that has passed from generation to generation to keep on keeping on. And you know, there's one point that I would agree with the people who want to book bans. Books can change us. But while they fear it for those of us who are fed by books, it's most often a change in heart or understanding that widens the world. As an adolescent, I don't remember exactly what age, I read Betty Friedan's The Feminine Mystique. I imagine there are some others here who did too. And today it may seem dated for the experiences it leaves out, like Black experiences. But reading it then left me stunned. I remember walking around my parents' house sort of in a trance for a couple of days, because for the first time I understood my mother and so many women who had been paid and valued for their work during the Second World War, and then sent by cultural change and expectations back into the kitchen, independency, all packaged in crinoline skirts and sold with waffle makers. No wonder my mother, who couldn't drive, who depended on my sometimes unreliable father, lived in an aura of disappointment. That book gave me compassion for her, and it connected me to all the mothers and foremothers of generations before me, and it helped me imagine the path I wanted to follow, the path that strangely brings me here. Think of the collective experience in this room, all of the times of being moved and connected and growing, maybe even being saved, as Roxane Gay says, by stories. What a force to be celebrated. Jim, can we share some of the books that have changed people's lives? Let me start with just a few. The Victory Garden Cookbook, How to Cook with Vegetables, but not only vegetarian. A Fine Balance by Rohinton Mistry helped me to understand that a spiritual life is possible for all of us, regardless of even the most dire, seemingly hopeless circumstances. Harry Potter, to share a cultural experience with my children as the book came out, and also Tolkien. Gone with the Wind, the first adult book I read, so much better than Nancy Drew.
Susan, I would just add that for the folks online, they can include their books in the chat.
Excellent.
And maybe we'll have a chance
Yes.
to read some of those later on. Just do that in the chat if you're on Zoom. So here I have Madame Speaker by Susan Page, Inspiration from Nancy Pelosi's Long Career and Lessons and Influence. Most important to me, this person says, Violence Unveiled, Bali maybe is the name, not 100% sure, made culture clear to me. Poems by Emily Dickinson. Dead Man Walking by Drushin inspired me to become active in movement to fight mass incarceration.
That's good. The Jungle by Upton Sinclair made me aware of how our food is handled in the process of moving from the farm to the table. The Other America, I was 17 when I read this in 1965. It raised my awareness of poverty and inequality in the U.S. No one book, but many have taught me so much. And I must say, have taught me what I do not want to be. And Hello South America, a booklet passed out in 6th grade that piqued my interest in the part of the world. I went on to major in Spanish and a career in education. The recent trip to Peru and Machu Picchu, I finally saw with my own eyes the scene on the front of that booklet that I received when I was age 12.
Grateful for Everyone, Herman Children, a book on meditation that allows one to transform difficult emotions to positive ones in oneself and all beings. The Better Angels of Our Nature by Stephen Pinker. Walden by Henry David Thoreau, Leaves of Grass, Walt Whitman. The Castle by Kafka. 12 O'Clock High.
Golden Guides to Nature, a set of books that made me want to be a zoologist. The Garden Primer by Barbara Damroth taught me so much about plants and gardening when we first moved to our house. Gardening's my favorite thing to do. I still have the book. It's 35 years old. Introduction to Child Development changed my major from international relations to child development and shaped the path of my future. Unsheltered by Barbara Kingsolver.
Top of the World, about to end with. Walden, which made me aware of how little material goods one needs to be happy. A lifestyle of simplicity is all that's necessary. The Silver Palette by Sheila Lukens. Still working with it, my favorite all-time cookbook. The Duxbury book helped orient me to my new home. Charlotte's Web, read aloud chapter book with my kids, always ended in tears.
Fried green tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe. I know this much is true by Wally Lamb. Oh yeah. Helped me understand the burden of mental illness on siblings and gave me insight to what my dad went through with his brother. Iceberg is melting. I can't read the author, I can't quite read the writing, but Iceberg is melting. 5 people you know in heaven, Mitch Albom, The Importance of Impact of People Making Your Life. The Outermost House, Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett, opened my perspective of human nature, struggles, and death.
The Big Book of Alcohol, Anonymous. Begin Again, this is the title Revisiting by James Baldwin, Message of Hope. Black Boy by Richard Wright. The Curious Chipmunk by Muriel Lasky, illustrated by George Helms. Given to me by a family friend. It's the first book that I remember. I love hearing the story and looking at the illustrations.
This might seem strange. I love this one, but it was definitely a math book. How Buildings Learn by Stuart Brand. All the Light I Cannot See. The Shack, Operating Instruction, Annie Lamott. As a teen, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. As an adult, the 1619 Project. Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance gave me a sense of recognizing simplicity and valuing the things that truly matter. And In Defense of Food by Michael Pollan made me look at food and agriculture differently and was a major influence on my own health choices and career path.
So Susan, I see two that have come in on the chat. So Abraham Maslow's Hierarchy of Needs and Eric Hoffer's The True Believer.
Finish.
So Little Women, The Power of Positive Thinking, or Vince Appeal. All Quiet on the Western Front. I think this is a quote. We can lie here in the trenches and pray to God we'll survive mustard gases, or we can get up and run and save ourselves. And Jesus did say God will save those who save themselves. You have power in action. So Learn from the Good Earth by Carl Bach gave me an appreciation of all people, regardless of background or class. I'm not sure what that word is. And then Kate Berry's Book of Bad Songs, which made me laugh.
You can just stay right there, Jim. There are also books that we love so much we want to revisit them time and again, like Good Night, Moon. And there are books so incredibly, beautifully written, so precisely true in every sentence that reading them is a peak experience. After reading 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, one person confessed, I just put the book down and sat motionless. I couldn't even explain how I felt other than I wish it had never ended. Not all the books we love tell happy stories. They can be tragic or sad, but they tap that well of common intensity in which joy and sorrow are close existential partners. And I, for myself, have fallen in love with so many books, so many, just to name a few. Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse, Zora Neale Hurston's Their Eyes Were Watching God, Alice Walker's The Color Purple, William Faulkner's As I Lay Dying, Donna Tartt Goldfinch, and more recently, Anthony Doerr's All the Light We Cannot See. All the Light follows a Parisian girl in occupied France who has lost her sight and ends up through a series of events working with the resistance, but also with a German boy whose talent for fixing radios had landed him in the Hitler Youth. But fate brings them together, they encounter each other, and they also encounter the power of a human being to understand much of what we don't see each day and to touch each other. If somebody asks why I love this book so much, I can only say it's heartbreakingly beautiful. What are some of the books that you love? Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. The History of the World in 8.5 Chapters by Julian Barnes. Or Julian Barnes, How God Ruined Heaven for Me. Lord of the Rings. This is Happiness by Niall Williams. Best language ever. Great Stories by Jane Austen.
All books by Kurt Vonnegut. For All the Light We Cannot See. I really enjoyed. Here's a list. In Defense of Food, The Omnivore's Dilemma by Michael Pollan. The Hidden Half of Nature by David Montgomery and David Bickway. Braden Sweetgrass by Robin Mortimer. And on the fiction side, Angelus Ashes by Frank McCourt. And Midnight in the Garden of Eden.
Collected Poems of Federico Garcia Lorca. The Joy of Cooking. Charlotte's Web. Read this so many times. Never tired of it. The Louise Penny series. Inspector Gamache. Love in the Time of Cholera, my favorite. Life Tides by Elizabeth Tarbox, a late colleague. The Stand, or Strand, love the, and Charlotte's Web.
A Pilgrim at Tinker's Creek by Amy Dillard. To Kill a Mockingbird, Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Good Omens by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett. 100 Years of Solitude. Great Gatsby.
The Feminine Mystique, I knew it. Harry Potter, The Unicorn Diaries, The Lord of the Rings, Giver of Stars, James and the Giant Peach, the Louise Penny series again, The Signature of All Things by Elizabeth Gilbert, The Overstory, A Land Remembered by Patrick Smith.
West with the Night by Beryl Markham. Robinson Crusoe, A Basic Tale of Self-Sufficiency and Resourcefulness. Bumper Book by Platt and Monk. My mother read this to me as a small child. While reading the end of this book, I read it to each of my 5 grandchildren.
Another Country by James Baldwin, The Thorn Necklace by Francesca Leah Bloch, and The Black Stallion by Walter Farley.
Hours by Vanessa Diffenbach, maybe. Humbug's Gift by Saul Bellows. When Bad Things Happen to Good People. Radiant Sweetgrass. News of the World.
Yeah, go finish.
A Course in Miracles. For 40 years it has changed my life. Pride and Prejudice. Most Loved is the Far Pavilion, History and Morality of Different Culture. Charlotte's Web. A Prayer for Owen Meany by John.
I hope you have a richer sense of everybody in this room. And a final word, if you have loved books, if they have touched you, transformed you, if they have simply given you pleasure, don't keep them to yourselves. Share the news of them, share the joy of them, share the chance for them to make a difference to someone else, and fight for them to stay on shelves so that people young and old might imagine the different endings, the better possibilities for which we all search. May you all find the stories you need to love this world. Can we rise, please, embody your spirit, and sing number 100 in the gray hymnal, I've Got Peace Like a River. go forward, friends. Embrace old stories and make room for new ones. Learn from them all and find comfort in them. Be open to truth and to wonder and see the world in unexpected ways. Keep books close, for as Frederick Douglass said, once you learn to read, you will be forever free.